Hello and welcome back to Afterglow, episode 16, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite franchises from my childhood, not just for gaming, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was a huge Turtles fan as a kid, and I still kind of keep up with them today. I read the Last Ronin comic miniseries, and oh my god, that's like so good, but yet so depressing. But, anyway, huge fan as a kid, and I want to talk about one of my favorite Turtles games from whenever I was a kid. So we're going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Although I also played the arcade version, I'm going to focus a bit more on the NES version, but we'll be talking about that after the music break. Alright, so let's get to the game. Now, whenever I was younger, like I said in the intro, I was a huge Ninja Turtles fan, right? So I remember, and I don't know whether it was like a school thing or my parents had taken me, I can't fully remember, but I was at Showbiz Pizza, which was a competitor for Chuck E. Cheese. But they had a Ninja Turtle machine in there, the arcade game, and I was wowed by it. I mean, already as a Turtle fan, I'm like, whoa! Then you go up there and it's got like 4-player controls. You can play as all 4 turtles at once. Like, that is really cool. And I played it a little bit, and I watched a couple of other people play it, and they were pretty far into it. I don't think they were at the Technodrome, which is the last level in the game, but they were bordering on it. I think they were in like the factory stage, if I remember right. But I was just enthralled by this game. Like, that looks awesome. And then I read, I believe in Nintendo Power, that it was coming to the NES, and it was going to be kind of renamed as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, which is really funny because if you play Turtles 1, you know that the stories will not line up between these two games. Because in Turtles 1, Splinter becomes a human again, which is kind of weird. But going back to it, you found out that the game was coming to the NES. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get it. Now, there were some limitations. You didn't have 4-player. The NES did have a 4-score adapter to allow for 4-player games, but Turtles 2 didn't support it. And it's probably due to the way the game was made, because I think this game was pushing what the NES could do at the time pretty hard. Like, if you were playing 2-player, and if you lined up your sprites right, you would get some major sprite flicker. But this game was so much fun. I had borrowed it from another friend. As a kid, we swapped games all the time, and I had Mario 3. And I loved Mario 3 to death, but I'd also played it to death. I'd beaten it many a time, and believe me, we will be talking about Mario 3 at some point on this show. But someone in town had gotten a copy of the Turtles 2 arcade game for their birthday. And after a few months, we swapped for a little bit. I ended up swapping back, but mostly over my mother, who was not real thrilled whenever she found out that I had swapped Mario 3 for Turtles, even though as kids we did this all the time. We'd swap games, we'd swap them back. It was our way of playing a bunch of new games without, having to rent them or buy them, because our game libraries were limited back then. Games were expensive. They still are today, of course, but and as a kid, you only got like maybe 2, 3, 4 games a year if you're lucky. So to keep, new games, new experiences coming, another buddy, he also only gets 3, 4 games a year. You'd swap them out. But anyway, I got the game. I remember I swapped it out right before I went to go stay at my grandparents' for a while. So I had a little tiny TV that I brought with me. It was a color TV, but it was a little tiny thing. Like maybe 12 inches, maybe 14. But I remember I hooked up my NES to it whenever I went to my grandparents. Had a small little bedroom I was in, tiny little TV, had the NES in there with me, and I would play Turtles 2 almost all night. And the game was really, really good. This is the regular beat 'em up. It plays just like Double Dragon if you've never played it. And if you haven't played a Turtles beat 'em up, well, you're probably a younger person listening to this. But it plays a lot like, Final Fight, Double Dragon, Streets of Rage. But it was incredible fun. And you eventually figure out that your characters have like a super attack, where if you hit the jump button and then like a split second later hit the attack button, you do this miniature leap swing, and it'll take out any foot soldier in one hit, or usually they'll take 2 hits. It also does extra damage to bosses, but you don't want to stand by the bosses for very long because they will wail on you hard. But after I learned the timing of this attack, you can burn through the game pretty quick. But it is pretty long for a beat 'em up, because on top of all the arcade levels, they added 2 more stages. There's a New York overhead level where it's snowing, and then there's like this dojo looking level, and both of them are a blast. They're kind of plain, especially the snowing level. The snowing level really felt like it was kind of thrown in. It's fun, and it's a change of pace, but there's not a whole lot going on other than these giant ice bricks falling from the sky that can, slam into your turtle. Not too much else going on there. The dojo had some neat stuff. It had these swinging doors that foot soldiers would hide behind. That was kind of cool. But I had a blast with this game. That being said, other than swapping a buddy of mine for it and then swapping back after, 2-3 months, I never actually owned a copy of Turtles 2 until I started recollecting again. The used game store or not the used game store, the rental store that I kept talking about, that I got a lot of my NES collection from, someone else had prod it before I had the opportunity to buy it. I did get the third NES Turtles game, which was another beat 'em up from there, but I never got the second one. Third one's really good too. But as far as getting the game back, it wasn't until I started collecting NES games as an adult where I finally bought a copy of it online. And again, it's a blast to this day. But I also got the arcade version a couple of times. I got it once on the Xbox 360 because it was sold on the 360 for like a very, very short period of time. I want to say like 6 months to a year. But I bought it there, and then I eventually got the arcade 1-up arcade machine cabinet that has both Turtles 1 and Turtles in Time in it. And I know everyone talks about Turtles in Time and considers it the best of the arcade games, but for me, maybe it's just because of nostalgia reasons, I gravitate towards that original arcade game. But that being said, the NES port is solid. Like, you've got to play it, even if you've played the arcade game, just for those 2 extra stages. And the graphics are a bit of a downgrade from the arcade, obviously, because it's an NES port, but they're pretty respectable. Like, the flame effect on the NES wasn't done half bad. And a lot of the extras from the arcade version are there. Like, the first stage has the foot soldiers, kicking down the doors in the burning apartment. Now, that being said, the NES game is a lot longer than the arcade version. Not just for the 2 extra levels, but the levels are actually longer as well. There's sections that they feel like they're maybe repeated a bit to extend the length of the game. And this is probably during the time where Nintendo was like anti-game rental. So they would increase the difficulty of the games a lot here in the US. And it's probably a side effect of that. But the game's still easily beatable. There is the Konami code you can put in. I believe it gives you 9 lives per continue instead of 3. So if you want to cheese your way through the game, you can always use that method as well. But that's my memories of an awesome, awesome NES game. Loved Turtles 2 on the NES. So if you haven't played it yet, go back and experience it. And I'm going to close this with the music outro being the Technodrome music from Turtles 2. And I will see you on the next episode of Afterglow.